And we'll go from here. Thanks everybody for joining. Today's session is going to be about concurrent planning from Kinaxis, and this is a topic that's become extremely popular these days because of just the amount of scenarios and changes that can occur in any sort of planning scenario, but the fact that it's hard to manage them all. It requires a lot of applications like this. So just a couple quick things about us. SCM Connections, we've been around for about 10 years now as a supply chain transformation firm, and what separates us specifically in this space is the ability to actually utilize supply chain planning applications to impact change. So being the complete firm that does the transformation of processes and results using technology to deliver you the best. And in this case, we're going to leverage our experience as a Kinaxis resale partner, which we're extremely happy to be, to show you one of the leading solutions out there in the market and one of its most popular features, concurrent planning. So with me in this journey today is Cameron Gerhardt, who's going to be doing most of the heavy lifting. Just a little bit about myself, where Cam introduces herself. I've been around the supply chain industry for about 20 years, mostly in supply network planning, architecture, in consumer products space before joining SCM Connections in 2013. And I've been here ever since, leading supply chain transformation efforts in industries across the board. So Cam, do you want?
And I am, sorry about that. I am Cameron Gerhardt. I'm a senior consultant here at SCM Connections, have been with the firm for about 2 years now. And in those 2 years, I've worked on various projects, whether it's implementing a new S&OP process or delivering a technology solution. My area of expertise is really that S&OP and supply optimization area. So yeah, I'm excited to show you guys a demo a little later on.
Cool. Thanks, Cam. And Jim, we also have Jim Kaler from SCM Connections. Jim, you want a little bit background? We didn't get your picture up in time, but I assure you he's a fine-looking gentleman in his own right.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Similar background to Mike, a lot of business experience, about 25 years of supply chain, but also spent quite a significant amount of time implementing supply chain solutions, also working, on the client side, running IT organizations. And I would be the equivalent of a business analyst, business support for the Kinaxis solution, and I'll try to help answer some of the questions in the chat and do any follow-ups from if we don't have the questions answered right away, we'll send them out afterwards. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah. Cool. So let's go ahead and get into it here. Just click on this thing. There you go. So supply chain planning of the past and present. So one of the things that is kind of defined, I would call it a previous generation, or at least when I was starting my supply chain journey, was a lot of departmental silos. So there's a lot of, some people at the best would call it a best of breed solution. At its worst would be, disconnected processes. But basically, you'd have a lot of siloed planning. You'd have sales doing a projection, you'd have marketing, finance, all of these elements, sort of getting a different departmental view of their version of the truth. There's an entirely too much effort spent reconciling those differences. So this is the era of emailing spreadsheets back and forth. So sales forecast version 12, version 15 of operations versus 4 of finance. Do you have Q2 or Q3 version? I think everybody who's been around for a little while has seen that type of planning. And planning via Outlook is never one for good synchronized planning. Teams end up sort of discounting others because they don't understand it or don't have the backup behind it. There's incredibly amount of duplicated work, and you end up having, I would call it tribalism within your organization, where there's a lot of animosity and distrust within the groups. People tend to do their own things, and it's by coincidence they tend to overlap. It sounds pretty negative, and it's just the way that it evolved. There wasn't really tools or applications to do it. So people did their best, but unfortunately it wasn't good enough to get one source of the truth for a planning application. So enter collaborative planning, and really this is the A better way to do it, you would call it sales and operations planning. You'd still have a lot of improved decision making. You still have a bit more, a bit more efficiency in it, but still you were mostly harmonizing the process. You were not harmonizing the information. So exception-based planning, you might still be planning on different elements, different platforms, but at least you'd have a conversation. And a lot of these times, those conversations were focused on, resolving spreadsheet discrepancies. But it was a half measure, and it did the job. So the future and where this is going is going to be synchronized planning. A lot of this comes into how organizations have seen supply chain, specifically in the past, I would say 3 years, as a critical element of their go-to-market strategy. So no longer is it seen as just an arm of procurement or a way to sort of, make sure inventory is in the right spot, but it's truly a strategic measure to ensure that you can meet your customers' needs. Now, doing that means a fully concurrent planning process and an application to support that. So what does that mean in real life? That means that in order to take a financial plan in our left silo there and understand if it can be met, you no longer can assume that you have infinite resources, infinite labor, infinite capacity to do what you needed to do, or at least at a cost that's reasonable. So what that means is that all of these elements need to come together to say, do we have labor to meet that financial plan? Do we have raw materials lined up? Do we have supplier issues? Is there port constraints? Is there recalls? All these elements that come into play need to be bubbled all the way back down and then all the way back up to understand how that financial projection can or cannot be met. So those functional teams need that concurrent planning process to understand and collaborate together to make sure that they can get to the best solution, and not just any solution, but the one that's best for the business, meaning most profitable, most service, and lowest cost. So where that comes in is concurrent planning. So in the Kinaxis side on the right, we have the ability, which we'll show here in a few minutes, to actually do that all in one spot. And what I say is that if this works properly, like we're going to show today, the technology almost removes itself from the equation, and you're just sort of doing your job. And all those friction points that came about from sharing, emails back and forth in version 14, version 15, and I don't have this and that and whatever. All those kind of friction points and areas of disconnect go away, and you end up just collaborating and solving problems. And that's sort of the magic of the current iteration of planning tools, and that they enable the process in ways that we never could before. So to be concurrent, really, this means that hundreds of people, like it says, can do on-the-fly what-if scenario planning. So if you think of these exercises, right, everybody's been in those meetings where there's options A, B, and C presented on a PowerPoint slide. And by now, everybody should know you always pick C, right? Because you're being set up to do so. But really what this application and these concurrent planning elements mean is that you don't just take things at face value by what you're presented, but you truly have what if scenarios with the depth of detail at every level to understand the impacts. So it's not just, is it feasible from a capacity point of view, but what's the impact on transportation? What's the impact on service? How does this affect, our C&D items? Really having just full visibility to all of the elements that are out there, all of the restrictions and all of the trade-offs, so everybody goes into these decision-making processes with eyes wide open, and you make those decisions in a very sort of sober and aware way of what the impact will be. You might not like it, but at least you'll be aware of it. And truly, that's the concurrent planning process that really has been a struggle in the industry for a long time, that applications, like we're going to show here, really enable to do those what-if planning side by side, instantly evaluate it on any metric that you want to, and move forward quickly. The true benefit, in my point of view, too, isn't just these scenarios that they exist, but the fact that you can do them so quickly that you, how can I say it? You reduce the decision cycle time. So you really reduce the amount of time it takes to even create a scenario, which means you get more iterations, more decision points, and a better solution in the same amount of time, which is really what these organizations are looking for. So in this Kinaxis one, do you want to just? Okay, so in this one with the Kinaxis platform RapidResponse, what you're really doing is getting one hub of information for the entire plan. So whether you have multiple ERP systems, WMS, sales systems, you really want to make sure that it all sits in one source of the truth, and that's something that we'll come back to over and over again, that you want your RapidResponse application to be indisputable, the source of truth. And once that bridge has been crossed, then you have the ability to do all these scenarios side by side. You have the ability to do delta scenarios. What did we do last month versus this month? And truly understand the impact of the scenarios and the decision points ahead of you. By doing this, you kind of remember when I said before, those silos bred a lot of tribalism and distrust. Now there's none of that because you are all have agreed to that baseline. You've agreed to the common set of ground rules, and now you can just work and dive into wherever you want to go. Not that everybody has the same concerns. Some people will be more concerned about, storage volume. Other people will be more concerned about service. But you're at least all working from one concurrent plan and solving that together in the best possible way for the organization. So with this, what does that really mean, right? This decision cycles. So you're really looking to minimize those plans to even build a plan. I mean, you can see these graphs right here, right? These are dramatically life-changing, not to be too dramatic about it, but it truly is. If you don't have to work nights to create a model, which is truly just you working in Excel, and you don't have to work weekends to bring something into Monday that's already out of date, those are things that change the organization for the good. You can see that the metrics here mean that you can make these decisions faster, which means that you can have more decisions. You can actually go through more iterations, more what-if plans. And it's truly that I think drives those metrics that you see at the bottom. On-time delivery isn't from the fact that your build plan or your analysis shrinks from days to hours. It really comes from the fact that you're able to explore more ramifications and explore more areas of opportunity than you would if it took you multiple days or weeks to create a plan. So all of this means you can get ahead of the problems, which means you don't move inventory where it shouldn't be. You make sure inventory is where your customers need it to be, and you're satisfying those orders as they come in because you can react that much faster before the ramification of that business process catches up to you. And that's really what we're going to show today, is how fast you can make those decisions and the impact that can have to your business. So with that, Cam, do you want to take over and walk through the demo for today?
Yep, thank you, Mike. All right, so just a quick overview of what we'll see in the demo, and then we'll switch to the system. So we're gonna go ahead and start up at the top, and obviously you can see it's a circle, meaning that we're gonna connect all of the pieces here, but we'll start with, an executive visibility piece, so being able to go in from a high level and understand any risks that you have going on. We're gonna go ahead and do a forecast adjustment, so we'll create some risk, identify sort of, the impact of that forecast adjustment and what it means for delivering our orders on time. We'll go ahead and identify the root cause, then figure out, potentially why our orders are late or what's going on. We're going to demonstrate how scenarios can be used to evaluate different options to solve the problem. And then finally do a scorecard comparison and approval. So taking a look at different scenarios we create, evaluating what is the best option for moving forward. And again, circling back up to the top with the executive visibility and being able to see everything green, hopefully, at the end. All right. Yep. Now let me try and get out of here. Okay. All right, so here we are now in the RapidResponse web client. Just to give you a quick overview of the web client, it's very sleek, easy to use interface. Response times are fairly quick and it's easy to navigate. People have a pretty quick time picking everything up. So everything over here on the left, I can go ahead and click on this and view all of my resources. RapidResponse has, a normal resource such as a workbook. It also has dashboards, which are great for visibility, scorecards, which we'll take a look at, and then it has some automation features such as task flows, which I'll explain in just a second. And then we can also see our scenario structure over here. So I'll explain the importance of the scenarios going through, but you can always come here and sort of see your tree structure and all the children and then what their parents are. And then up here on the left, we have a collaboration center. Won't be getting into that today, but it's a really great feature, easy to use with people outside of the RapidResponse system and get them involved with things and be able to quickly send emails about alerts and so forth. And then what I want to point out again is those task flows that I mentioned. So this is a really great feature in RapidResponse, probably one of my favorite. And essentially a task flow is, predefined guided process steps. So today I've set up one just to walk through all the different steps that I want to cover in this demo, but a business could configure a task flow for any process that they may have. So you could have one for your consensus demand planning process. You could have one for, walking a planner through steps if they discover a material shortage. Whatever your process is, you can go ahead and create a task flow. So we've got a lot of steps here. If I pull one open, it's going to give me, some notes on what step of the process this is, what's happening here, what I should be looking for, and then it'll attach to the resource where I should go to do those activities or look at certain things. So I'm going to come back to this just a couple times throughout the demo to pull open certain resources and go from there. All right, so we are starting off in the SNOP Demand Planner dashboard. So I'm going to put my demand planner shoes on right now, and this is something that I could have open every day when I come in and sit down at my computer. From a high level, I can immediately be aware if I have any new messages or alerts and so forth. So over here on the right, just a couple quick high level charts. I can see my revenue by product family. Hover over these and it tells you the exact amount of revenue. And then down in the bottom corner, I have my consensus demand plan where I can see the constrained, actuals, and how we're tracking compared to the annual plan. And of course, these can be configured to, include whatever charts or graphs are relevant to your organization's needs. And then over here on the left, I have a network visibility chart. So I really like this, from a very high level, you can see your entire network in one picture. So over here on the left, I have my external production. So these would be subcontractors, suppliers, whatever. And then the internal production facilities that they feed into. So it looks like we have 4 of our own plants here. And then which of those plants feed our central DCs and eventually the regional DCs. And what's great about this is it's not just a picture, but it's actually informative. So I can go ahead and hover over any site here. I can, where it is, see where it is, the allocation for that location, if I have any late orders, etc. And then you can also see how the different nodes of our network are connected. So we have all of these green lines. If I hover over one of those, it'll tell me, that things are looking good. In this case, I just have 1 late planned order, but in most of these, I have 0, so they're green, good to go. However, down here, I can see that I have some red ones. So if I hover over that, I can automatically see that I have 590 late planned orders from this subcontractor going to my plant. So immediately, I see this red here, I know that there's a problem and I as a planner need to dig into that. And then the other place to access, alerts or cautionary information is up in my message center. So it looks like I have a new message here, and I'm just going to go ahead and click on this. It's because I had an alert that was triggered. And this is just going to open up a quick PDF, which is great. I can, download this, send it to people that maybe aren't in the RapidResponse system, or whatever the case is. This is very easy to share. And so it's basically telling me that this alert has to do with our revenue value. I can see which scenario it's for and so forth. And then if I zoom in here and kind of scroll into the future, Down in the August, September timeframe, I can see that my revenue isn't quite meeting our annual plan target. So that's what we're gonna take a look at today. So we'll hop back in RapidResponse, and now I'm gonna go into our consensus demand planning workbook. So this, again, is a high-level overview of our consensus demand plan. Right now, I'm just looking at our laptop product group, and I can see different line items here that are part of our consensus demand planning process. So we have our annual plan up here. It's kind of the target we're trying to achieve. We have our financial plan, sales, stat, etc. Then we have a place to go ahead and put in certain adjustments if that's necessary, and our unconstrained demand plan. So this is the plan that we're working toward. This is our current operating plan. And finally, down here at the bottom, one thing to call out is our delta. So clearly we can see that we have a delta in August and September. If you go ahead and take a look at these unconstrained demand plan numbers in those 2 months, you'll notice that they are lower than the annual plan, and that's what this difference is right here. Really great too, we have it in chart view down here. So whatever your preference is, if you want to come in, see the chart, notice that red, and then go dig into the numbers, it really meets all users' needs. So today we're going to address this delta to plan. And what we're going to do is, clearly we can see that we're not quite meeting our annual plan target, and we actually had a customer approach us saying that they would like to buy some additional laptops in these 2 months. So that's great for us because it's going to get us closer to our annual plan target, but of course we need to see the impact of that. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create a new scenario off of our baseline, and we'll just call this one demand increase. And within just a second, I have a new scenario. Essentially what this scenario is, right now it's private to just me, but it's sort of a copy of our data set. It's not going to copy everything. It's only going to track the changes between this child scenario and the parent above it. So that's why it's so quick. When we pull these into load, it just takes a couple of seconds. It's not, creating a copy of your entire database. So now I'm going to go in here, and in August and September, I'm going to put in 20,000 units. That's how much our customer came to us and said that they would like. And then I'll just hit save. And that is the power of concurrent planning. So what you saw was, just in a matter of seconds, this adjustment was run through our entire network. So all the way from our suppliers, again, to those regional DCs, it ran through every node, looked at how many materials we had available, what our machine capacity availability was, and lead times, safety stock requirements. It goes through every single element of your network, and in a second it was able to tell me, okay, if you go ahead and add in those 20,000 units, we now have this at-risk percent. And what this represents is a percent of our demand that will be unable to fulfill, or at risk of being able to fulfill it late. So this is now what we want to dive into and see what's causing this, if we can resolve it. So we'll just simply drill into that. It's another great feature of RapidResponse, all these drill to links. You don't have to go searching for, a workbook, forget the name of it. Yeah, it's just like pulling a thread, taking you right to the next step. So here we are looking at our demand plan analysis. Up at the top, again, we have our chart view. We can see that in the current month, the next month, we've got a bunch of orders, a little bit of forecast still left to be consumed, and then moving into the future, our forecast and some at risk. So down in the bottom right, we can see in a pie chart view, which items are responsible for most of that at-risk quantity. And then over here on the left, we can see each individual product, our planner who's responsible for it, and the amount that's at risk. What's even better is, it's great to know this quantity, but what is the impact of that on my business? And with the pricing and cost information that we can feed into RapidResponse, you can immediately see your at-risk value for each of these items. And finally, we have our cumulative at risk. So, perhaps I'm just going to be late on the first 2 items, that's only going to cost me about 2.9. But if I am truly late on all of these items, it's going to be a significant amount more.
The big benefit here is it takes the subjectivity out of these decision-making processes. So it's not, you know, a favorite client or a favorite product, or we always do this kind of a thing. You kind of just scrub that out and say, what is the biggest impact to our business, or the biggest risk, right? And it comes right there in dollars, right in front of your face, and it's hard to ignore that. But it also takes a lot of that tribalism out. If it's there in black and white, it's easy to quantify and easy to make a decision on.
All right, so now we know what's at risk of being late, the impact that that'll have on our business, and we need to drive into what's causing these orders to be late. So again, another quick drill to, just gonna look at my laptop category and apply a quick filter. So here we are now in our aggregate supply plan. And this is, now I'm gonna swap to supply planner role. And this is essentially a view that they would be working in. A lot of things going on here, but just up at the top, essentially they have their demand plan that they should be planning toward. And then all of these items in the middle are what they would go through to come up with their supply plan. We scroll down here, you can see that we have this item called overloaded constraints. So it's telling us in each period here if we have overloaded constraints. And we can see that in those months where we input that additional demand, it looks like we do. So perhaps, you know, this is leading me to think that our overloaded constraints are why we're not able to deliver all of those orders on time. So again, another quick drill through. We'll go here and see those 6 resources that are overloaded. So I can see who's responsible for planning them, and then the shortage that I'm not able to produce on that line in the month, and then again, that revenue impact. So pretty hard to, you know, deny it or, you know, shift blame and, you know, say that this isn't actually happening when it's right there. Everyone's on the same page. You have all of your data in one system, and this is, you know, what's actually happening. So today we're going to go ahead and take a look at line 12. And here I am now in my constraint manager. So this is really my capacity planning view. Again, table and chart view here. So up top in the table, I can see my available capacity in units. So each week I'm able to plan 12,000 units. So my load is sort of, you know, my unconstrained amount that I want to produce. And you can see in the current weeks, we're under that 12,000, that's great. We can make it all. But then if we scroll out here and starting into, you know, the time frame where we put in that adjustment, we're seeing that we're overloaded. So ideally, I'd like to make 992 more units than I have capacity to, so I can notice that overload right here. Same thing is visible in this chart down below. We've got our load and this kind of greenish blue bar right here, and our available capacity, and you can see that we're clearly exceeding it. So I do notice that I have extra capacity here in the weeks leading up to my overload. So I kind of want to explore, what if I shifted some production forward? The way we have our system set up right now is it's not going to pull it forward unless I specifically tell it to. So we'll go ahead and do that. And the way we do that is through managing a pre-planned limit. So now I've got this table down here. I can see each part that runs on this line 12, and I can go ahead and for each individual part say I want to pull it forward or not, or I can do it for the entire category. So that's what I'm going to do. Again, time to create a new scenario because we're going to, you know, want to compare at the end and see what was the best option. So I'll call this enable pre-plan. Okay, and then I can just simply go here. We have that new scenario in just a second. and I'm going to edit this range and change it to -1. So what this -1 means essentially is that I'm telling the system to go ahead and pre-plan, pull production forward as far as needed, so long as materials are available to do so. If I only wanted to, specify that this item can be production can be pulled forward for, let's say, 7 days. If I put 7 in here, then it would respect that and only pull production for that item forward by 1 week. So you can put specific quantities in here based on the product, or you can just do -1 and let it pre-plan as far forward as needed. So we'll just go ahead and save this change here. And just like that, we're good to go. And now I'm going to go back and see the impact of this. So we will return to our consensus demand plan. I'm going to swap in that new scenario we just created. And you can immediately see that that change had been, again, run through the entire network from start to finish. And with that change, we were able to reduce our demand at risk %. So it's not completely gone, but definitely looks better than before. Perhaps our business has decided for some reason that we don't want to pre-plan, we want to look at other options, or maybe we want to pre-plan and evaluate something else to resolve the remaining at risk. So now what we're going to look to is potentially purchasing this item from a vendor instead of making it ourselves, and see how that helps resolve. So I'm going to refer back to my task flow here really quick and open up a new resource. All right, so here I am in our planning sheet. Essentially, this is just going to show me, at least this tab is just going to show me my alternate supply sources. So we can see that for this item, which is an 11-inch laptop, we have 3 different sources for it. So first we can make it, which is what we just saw. We made it. We can also do an overtime option. We're not going to explore that one today. And then we have a third one, which is purchasing it from a vendor. So if we scroll over to the right a bit, we can see that they all have the same lead time, but to purchase it, it's going to be twice the cost of making it ourselves. So that's okay. We still want to see if it's going to resolve our demand at risk. So we're going to try it out. And again, going to do this in another scenario. Oops, sorry. I'm going to do it based off of the demand increase scenario that we did, and we'll call this one enable buyer 1. Oops, sorry about that. Actually, we are going to do it off of this first scenario. Okay, and so all we have to do is just click on this item, and we're going to say we want to buy this one now. It's no longer disabled. Again, click save. It goes through that entire network. So let's take a look at the results of this one, again, by going back to our consensus demand planning workbook. And now we'll just swap in that scenario that we did. And we can see our at-risk % change again. So in this case, it actually went up. It wasn't quite as good as, pre-planning, but it was definitely a worthwhile scenario to try out. Perhaps our vendor doesn't have enough capacity to give us the exact amount we want, and we could continue to dig into that. But today we're going to kind of just evaluate the options that we have so far. So to do that, you could simply keep switching back and forth between the scenarios here and look at the number. Our at risk is better in one versus the other. But what does that really mean for a business? What is this telling us?
Just real quick, I think to interject about this and coming back to the same theme of removing the subjectivity, this takes away from the comments of we always do X or we should do Y in terms of solutions. And it really kind of gives you a quantifiable way to get innovative solutions into supply chain issues rather than doing what you've always done in the past.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so lastly here, we're going to go ahead and take a look at a scorecard, which will evaluate all of our options side by side. So over here on the left, we've got 5 different metrics. These, can be configured based on your own business. If you have other metrics that you consider to be more important than these, you can definitely configure to compare based off of those. And then over here on the right, you can see that each of them has a different weight. So in our case, we're, saying that revenue is our most important metric here, so we'll give that one the highest weight. Perhaps for your business, it's fulfilling the most customer orders, in which case it would be on time to request. You can give that one a higher weight or whatever other metrics you add into the system. So taking a look at these 4 plans side by side, we can see the impact that this is having on our business and truly understand what this means for us. So starting over here with the baseline, this is what we started off with when we opened that alert and saw the spreadsheet, saw that there was a gap to the plan. And then we went ahead and created a scenario where we increased the demand by 20,000 units in August and September risk. So you can see, so increased demand, we certainly increased our revenue, but we did drop our on time to request fulfillment. And then we took a look at pre-planning. So what would happen if we allow those orders to be pulled forward when we had available capacity? And it looks like that enabled our revenue to go up a bit as well. And now we're able to fulfill more orders, and we went from 91 to 94%. And then finally, we checked out the scenario of purchasing from a vendor. So here we can see that our on time to request dropped. It's still higher than the increased demand scenario, but not as good as enabling the pre-plan. And that's of course reflected in the revenue as well here. So overall, based on the weight of each of these metrics, we can see that our highest score is the enable pre-plan scenario. So this is something that you could then go share with your manager and executive at the company. You can walk them through some of these steps and say, hey, we did this evaluation. This incorporates information from all of our departments, from sales to finance to operations, and this is what's best overall. So again, breaking down those silos and being a truly connected organization, and again, how that concurrency enables you to see those impacts in just seconds across the entire organization. And then ultimately, you would have the ability to go ahead and commit this scenario if the executive approves it. We can commit this up to the parent, which in this case would be our increased demand, and then we could commit it further to be our new baseline operating scenario. Again, these scenarios are super easy to create. Individual users can go in here and quickly model any other options. You can keep them private, so it's just your own personal spot to test out something, and then once you know if it looks good or not, you can share it with other users. So scenario planning is a great feature, and also feeds into the concurrency as well, because we saw how the concurrent nature of RapidResponse means that within just a second, your entire plan is updated across the entire network. So having those scenarios really enables you to test different options without affecting someone who's working based off of the current operating plan. So that kind of wraps up the system portion of this. We did want to, before taking a couple questions, just go ahead and highlight again the benefits of concurrency. So, here we can see that it leads to higher productivity, lower costs, happier customers, and more engaged employees. So, as Mike was saying, breaking down those silos, opening up those synergies, allowing for different departments to collaborate with each other and understanding the impact. It's not my plan versus your plan, it's our plan. And definitely shortens planning cycles by having all of your data in one spot and being able to, see everything within an instant. And yeah, analyzing your changes much faster than you could ever do, in an offline spreadsheet, sending it back and forth between different departments and figuring out what works best. So anything else to add, Mike? And then.
Yeah, so I think, just to reiterate that, the last one, I don't want to discount that, which is the job satisfaction and creativity. If everybody's working from the same set of data, not arguing about which one is right or which one is most updated, now you're all pulling in the same direction, and that's a huge benefit. So it's not as quantifiable, but it's definitely impactful. And applications like this are sort of blurring the line between functionality and job satisfaction, which is really great. So next one, just to highlight one area as well. If this looked great to you, but you want to see it in person, we actually are hosting an live and in-person interactive workshop in lovely downtown Chicago on June 21st. There's a registration link we'll send out in the follow-up notes to this. It's going to be an in-person demo hosted by your very own Cameron Gerhardt, as made famous on today's webinar. And she'll go ahead and walk everybody through it. You'll get your fingers on the actual application. You'll be able to play with it, create your own scenarios, and kind of push it to see how it works. Real user-friendly, real impactful, and I think everyone that attends will get a lot out of it. So go ahead and register for that if you haven't already. There's only a few spots remaining, so we'll go ahead and fill those up and then close it down. So with that, I want to thank everybody for attending. Great session, great attendance, and with that, everybody have a great rest of your week, and reach out to us for more questions, more information on your RapidResponse Kinaxis solution. Thanks, everybody.